The morning sun gently bathed the small house nestled deep in the valley. Birds chirped softly, and the wind whispered through the leaves. Inside the kitchen, Grandma Tam carefully packed herbal medicine into small paper bags. Lythica, a quiet young woman with sad but gentle eyes, helped her clean the table and wash the teapot. "You two stay home today," Grandma Tam said as she adjusted the basket. "I'm heading to the market to sell some medicine so we can buy rice and salt. We're running out." Lythica smiled lightly. "Don't worry, Grandma. Go early and come back soon." Grandpa Tam, ready with his bundle of herbs, added, "And remember, to Kentucky don't open the door for strangers." Lythica nodded. At the mountain market, Grandma Tam set up her modest stall near the edge of the road. Locals stopped by one after another, some asking for joint medicine, others for postpartum tonics. With kindness and clarity, she explained the effects of each herb, choosing doses carefully. The basket of medicine grew lighter, the collection of small bills thicker. A young woman rushed up, out of breath. "2 packs of blood tonic, please. My daughter just gave birth and she's so weak." "Here, dear. This helps restore blood and energy. It'll make her stronger in no time," Grandma Tam replied, her voice warm. Soon the medicine was sold out. She packed up and headed home. Meanwhile, not far away, in a shaded alley in the village, a group of men gambled loudly. Cards slapped on the table, coins clinked, and curses flew in the air. A middle-aged man, Grandma Tam's estranged son, was deep in the middle of it all, tense and defeated. "Out of money again?" one of the gamblers sneered. "Go beg your old man for more." "He gave me all he had," the man spat. "He won't give me another coin." Another gambler, eyes sly, leaned in. "Didn't you say that girl living with them is pretty?" The man hesitated. "They watch her too closely," he muttered. "I don't need much," the gambler grinned. "Just a chance to get close." Back at home, the sun dipped lower in the sky. In the kitchen, Lythica was preparing dinner with a young girl. They cleaned vegetables, sliced bananas, and washed snails for a soup. "Make sure to rinse the snails well. They're full of mud," Lythica said, gently showing the girl how to clean them. "Pick only the tender spinach leaves." The little girl beamed. "I'll fetch some firewood and come back to help." Later that evening, Grandpa and Grandma returned. They were exhausted, but smiled with pride seeing the food ready and the house tidy. The family sat down together to eat. The smell of snail and banana soup filled the air, mingling with the warmth of quiet conversation. "I'll head to the neighboring village tomorrow," Grandpa said between bites. "A sick family there needs me." "Don't worry," Lythica replied. "I'll take care of things here." The next morning they left early. Lythica stayed behind, tidying up the house and starting to cook rice. While rinsing vegetables, a knock came at the door. Thinking her grandparents had returned early, She opened it without hesitation. A stranger stood there, tall, unshaven, eyes scanning the room behind her. "You're all alone, aren't you?" he said with a chilling smile. "Such a pretty girl shouldn't be left by herself." "Who are you?" Tukai asked, backing away. "What do you want?" The man stepped forward. "Help! Help me!" she screamed. The man lunged, but before he could reach her, the neighbor burst through the gate. "What's going on here?" she shouted. The man froze, glared, and ran off. Still shaking, Tukai recounted everything. The neighbor stayed by her side until Grandma Tam rushed home. Tukai threw herself into her arms, sobbing. "I thought it was you. I thought you came home, but he came in." "It's all right now, child," Grandma whispered. "He's gone." The neighbor turned to her. "Next time, never open the door unless you're sure." From that day forward, Grandma and Grandpa never left Tukai alone again. That night, Tukai sat on the front porch gazing at the stars. Grandma Tam brought her a shawl, draping it around her shoulders. "I'm scared, Grandma," Tukai whispered. "What if I'm the reason bad things keep happening? Maybe I shouldn't stay." Grandma sat beside her. "You're family, not by blood but by heart. You're not a burden, child. You are a blessing." The sky shifted from deep indigo to the soft blush of dawn. Tukai opened the wooden window and looked out over the valley. "I still don't remember who I am," she thought. "But now I know where I belong. No matter how painful the past, this place, this family is my home." Since the terrifying encounter, Tukai had grown more reserved. She spent her days in the kitchen, helping Grandma Tam cook, boil water, and wash vegetables, trying to keep her hands busy and her thoughts at bay. One early morning, Grandpa Tam was preparing to leave for the market. "Stay home and look after the house. I'll be back by noon," he said, adjusting the herbal medicine baskets. Tukai nodded silently. The young girl nearby helped arrange the bundles, wrapping each one tightly with string. At the mountain market, Grandpa Tam moved between groups of people, his voice calm and persuasive. He explained which herbs helped with joint pain, which were best for postpartum recovery. An old woman bought 2 packs for her daughter who had just given birth. But from the corner, a scruffy man watched without saying a word. He didn't approach, didn't buy, just smirked and walked away. That evening, in a shady corner of the village, a group of young men gathered to gamble. Among them was the estranged son of Grandpa Tam, who once had ties to the incident with the intruder. "You lost again?" one scoffed. "Go beg your old man for more money." "If you won't help, I'll help myself," he snapped back. One of them leaned in, grinning. "I heard that girl living with your folks is real pretty. I'll pay to meet her. They treat her like family. It won't be easy. You don't need to do anything. Just get me close. I'll take care of the rest." He threw a few bills onto the mat. Late at night, Tukai prepared a simple dinner. The fire crackled gently. Just as she set down the lid, a knock came at the door. She assumed it was Grandpa and opened it. A tall man stood outside, dressed in dark clothes, eyes gleaming. "You home alone?" he asked, stepping closer. "You're even prettier than they said." She backed away quickly. "My grandparents will be home soon." He shoved a hand on the door. "Relax. I'm not here to hurt you, unless you make it difficult." "Help!" she screamed. A neighbor heard and rushed over. The man cursed and fled. Tukai trembled, white as a sheet. "I thought it was them. I didn't think. When we say don't open the door, we mean it," Grandma Tam said firmly when she returned. "From now on, this house stays locked." That night, Tukai sat alone outside. The night air chilled her skin. Her mind whirled, not with fear but something deeper. Resolve. The next day, she was up early, cooking and cleaning before anyone else stirred. Grandma stepped out, surprised by the scent of stew simmering in the pot. "It's snail and banana soup," Tukai said quietly. "I thought I'd try making it." During lunch, Grandpa Tam mentioned something odd. There was a strange man at the market. Just stood there watching. Never said a word. "I feel like I've seen him before." Tukai's heart sank. It had to be him. That night, as she cleaned the kitchen, she found a scrap of paper tucked behind the door. "I know who you are, and I'll be back. Don't think you can hide forever." She gripped the paper tightly. No one knew it was there. She didn't tell anyone. But inside something shifted. She wouldn't run. Not anymore. It was still dark when Tukai awoke, her pillow damp with tears. The fog clung to the windows like a ghost. For days her thoughts had spun in circles. The same questions haunted her. Who am I? Why are they after me? Over breakfast, Grandpa Tam mentioned he'd be going to a nearby village with an old friend to help treat a patient. He asked Tukai to rest, to stay safe and not worry about housework. She nodded, but inside her pulse quickened. Something didn't feel right. Something was coming. As they left, she locked the door and quietly slid a small knife into her sleeve. While sweeping the yard, Tukai heard voices near the bamboo fence. "She's home alone?" "Yeah, the old folks left this morning." Perfect timing. She froze, pressing her ear against the wall. Her heart pounded. Sweat gathered at her temples. She crept inside, closed the windows, and placed herself near the door with the knife in hand. Soon a knock. Knock, knock, knock. "Sweetheart, it's Auntie, a friend of Grandpa Tam's. I brought something for you." She didn't respond. Then a second voice, more gruff. "If you won't open, we'll come in anyway." A hand slammed the door. Lythieuca screamed, raised her knife. The commotion drew attention. A local man from the village rushed over and pulled the stranger back. The intruders fled. Grandma Tam arrived to find Lythieuca shaken. The door scratched, her hands trembling. They sat together. Lythieuca told them everything. After a long silence, Grandpa Tam stood and returned with a small wooden box. "We've been keeping this," he said softly. Inside, a silver note, a small child's ring, and a short letter in strange handwriting. "If the girl ever remembers, never leave her alone." No signature. Lythieuca picked up the ring. There, carved faintly, was the wing of a bird. She stared, stunned. She had seen this before in her dreams. That night she dreamt again. A woman's voice, desperate, breathless. Someone running. Shots fired. Dogs barking. Then a blast. Her mother's hand letting go. The world tumbling. Lythieuca woke in tears. "Mom!" That morning the sky was heavy with low clouds. A strange stillness hung in the air, pressing down on the village like a warning. Lythieuca sat silently in the yard, staring at the small ring in her palm. She had cleaned it carefully, and the carved bird wing was now clearly visible. "I've seen this before," she whispered. "But where?" Footsteps approached. Grandma Tam sat beside her. "Another dream?" she asked gently. "I saw someone holding me, running, getting shot. So much blood." Then she let go. "I fell." Grandma didn't say anything at first. She only squeezed Lythieuca's hand, nodding slowly. "You're starting to remember," she said. "And that means the danger is closer too." Lythieuca looked up. "You knew." "I never knew who you were. But when Grandpa brought you home, you were badly hurt. Your clothes were burned, and in your coat pocket, there was a small map." "A map?" "I hid it. We were afraid. But maybe it's time you see it." In a quiet back room, Grandpa Tam opened a hidden floorboard. From it, he pulled out a folded, yellowed piece of paper. On it, hand-drawn symbols. A wooden bridge, a winding stream, and a red X marked with the letter D. Lythieuca studied it carefully. D for what? Destination? Danger. "Maybe it's where you lived," Grandpa murmured. "Or where it all began. I have to find out." The next morning, she packed her things quietly. "I need to go," she told them. "To where?" "I have to find out who I really am. I can't hide forever." Grandpa Tam nodded, his eyes soft but heavy. "Then go. But remember, where there is no love, there is no home." The wind howled through the cracks in the roof. In the dim kitchen, Lythieuca sat under the flickering oil lamp, writing. Not in a journal but a letter. "Dear Grandpa and Grandma, if I don't return tomorrow, please don't mourn. I have truly lived, thanks to your love." A creak behind her. She turned. Grandma Tam stood silently. "Are you writing something?" just in case I don't come back. Because of the map? She nodded. She had made her decision. She had to go to the marked D point, where everything might have begun, or would finally end. The next morning was gray and heavy. Grandpa Tam took her to the edge of the village. They hugged. No words, just understanding. The path to the D was treacherous. Rocky, slippery, thick with underbrush. Tukai clutched the map in one hand and the carved ring in the other. By noon she arrived at a small abandoned hut, just like the sketch. She knocked. No answer. Inside it was dusty, but the fire pit was warm. Someone had been here recently. Under the table she found a notebook. Faded writing. Your real name is Luanine. Your mother was a doctor. Your father died resisting a trafficking network. They will come for you. She trembled. Her name, her past, her blood. Tukai collapsed next to the notebook, tears silently streaming down her cheeks. The names, images, and fragmented memories came flooding back like a flood. The mother in the white blouse, the gunshots, the ring, the frightened eyes. Everything she had buried deep inside now came alive. She sat silently for hours, reading each line in the old notebook, as if she were turning over each page of her memories. The more she read, the clearer she saw. Her mother was not just a doctor. She had been a witness in a case involving a large-scale human trafficking ring, and it was because she refused to remain silent that she had been hunted down. She picked up the map again, only now noticing. Below the letter D was a small line, almost completely blurred. Tanine, if you don't come back. As the afternoon wore on, Tukai rekindled the fire, warming herself and thinking. If her mother believed she would find her way here, then she couldn't give up. She had to keep going. Must find out the whole truth. At that moment, a noise behind her rang out. She turned around. A familiar figure appeared. Not a stranger. It was the old man who had saved her years ago. I remember, he said. Tukai was stunned. You, who are you? The person who carried you back from the edge of the cliff. Do you remember the burning grass around you? That was the night your mother was shot, he said. He had been her father's friend. When her family was being hunted, he tried to find a way to save her, but only managed to bring the little girl back to the forest. As for her mother, she had not returned. I thought you were Mr. and Mrs. Tam's daughter? He shook his head. They raised you because they lost their youngest daughter that year. They treated you like their own daughter. But I know you are Neen. Tukai knelt down, her emotions mixed. Anger, gratitude, heartache. She whispered, My mother mentioned you in the book. Now I have a choice. Either continue to hide, or face it bravely like my parents did. She looked at him, her eyes determined. I choose to face it. Suddenly footsteps. A tall man in black stepped inside, eyes sharp. On his hand, a ring just like hers. At last we meet again, and Neen, he sneered. Tukai stepped back. Who are you? The man who brought you into this world, and now will erase you from it. She drew her small knife. I'm not the helpless child you once chased. He smirked, but there was tension behind his eyes. They fought. She stabbed his shoulder and ran into the forest. He chased her. She slipped down a steep slope, hitting rocks, her leg bleeding. Just as she thought it was over, a hand reached for her. The man who had once saved her. He had never stopped watching. You must fight, he said. But not alone. Together they delivered evidence. Ledgers, maps, written confessions to the authorities. A trafficking ring was exposed. Arrests followed. Tukai stood at a crossroad. Return to Grandpa and Grandma's home, or walk into the world as Luanine. She went back. Grandma Tam wept. You're not Tukai, but you will always be our child. That night she wrote again. This time a first chapter. My name is Luanine. I once lost my memory, but now I remember, and I choose to live without fear.
Right to be so full of vitality and joy after such a short time. She described it, her travels around the world with sparkling eyes, and her plans for the next year with a joyful smile. What a contrast to how I was. Phyllis had been so open with me. I felt encouraged her to ask her, did you ever feel like you were just waiting to die? I don't mean to I don't mean to die. I just mean feeling like all you were doing was going through the motions with no filter and no purpose. She emphatically stated, no, no, never. I must have looked incredulous because she shared the following story. When she was a little girl, her family lived in Java, where her dad was an executive with Shell Oil. One day, Japanese soldiers came to the door and took her dad away with a bayonet pointed at his back.